Welcome back to the Sportsmemo College Football Every Game on the Board podcast with our next guest, Brent Crow. Brent, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Hey, Drew. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good. We're making our way down here for the Every Game on the Board podcast. We got a lot going on, but we'll get right into it. We're going 141 down to game number 180, so 20 games here. A good one to start off, Brent. We got a Big 12 matchup. You know what that means. A lot of points here. We got Oklahoma at West Virginia. 6th ranked at the 9th ranked team in the nation. Looks like the Sooners laying 1 on the road, some 1.5s out there. 83.5 the total I'm seeing at Chris.
Yeah, this one may be like Monday Night Football last night with the Rams and the Chiefs. Whoever has the ball last wins, and a lot of points. I mean, you know, both teams are real similar. They have great offenses and very bad defenses. And, I mean, you know, if I'm not mistaken, there's a chance, or pretty good chance, they play again next week. Is that right? In the Big 12 championship game. But I mean, for Oklahoma, they have to win. I mean, they can't lose this one, then win next week and be in the playoffs. So, you know, the more pressure on Oklahoma. West Virginia, tough loss last week, and you know that kind of ruined their opportunity with the loss to Oklahoma State. And again, it was their defense that let them down. You know, I mean, I think it's going to be a great game to watch. It's really hard to pick a side. I mean, the total's way up there at 83, but I wouldn't bet under in this game. I mean, you've got two explosive offenses, and, I mean, they've combined to score 954 points this year. So, you know, you've got, like I said, the makings of another high-scoring shootout, and the team with the ball last probably wins.
Yeah, it looks like pretty good weather there in Morgantown, so I'm with you. I wouldn't recommend betting the under on this either. We got 143, 144, the Apple Cup, Washington at Washington State. Looks like Wazoo laying 3 in Pullman, 53 the total, Brent.
You know, and Wazoo's, you know, they've had a great year. They're 10-1, and typically they have a couple of screw-ups along the way, but they've avoided it for the most part this year, and they find themselves, you know, in great position here. Hosting their rival, and for Washington, I think it's even at 8-3. You know, it's a disappointing season for Washington. They just have not done as what they were expected to do, and you know, this is their chance to kind of, you know, right the ship a little bit. You know, I would lean a little bit to the dog here. I mean, I know Washington State has been very productive offensive. They have the best offense in the Pac-12. But just, I don't know, something tells me that they lose this one, and Washington gets a little satisfaction for an otherwise disappointing season.
What do you think of Mike Leach overall? Are you a fan of I
love the guy. Yeah, I mean, I love Mike Leach. I love his personality. I mean, you know, he's always been offensively focused, and he hasn't really been able to, you know, put together the whole package. I mean, this year is by far his best team, I would say. And it kind of was unexpected. I mean, they lost some guys from last year, and they kind of snuck up on everybody this year. But, you know, I'm not, you know, it seems like typically, like I said, you know, he'll lose a game as a 10 or 12 point favorite that cost them winning the Pac-12 or whatever. But he's avoided it so far this year. And I think the Pac-12's down, obviously, a little bit. I mean, you've only got like 4 teams in the Pac-12 with a winning conference record. So, but we'll give credit to Leach and Washington State for what they've done. And I pull for the guy. I mean, anybody that is funny and, you know, he doesn't take himself seriously, I mean, I think he's definitely good for the game.
Brent, heading to the Saturday slate, we got 145, 146 Pitt at Miami, 3:30 Eastern kick here, 50.5 the total with the Canes laying 5.5 in Miami Gardens.
Yeah, and, you know, Pittsburgh's been a shocker to me. I mean, they lose in the second week of the season to Penn State 51-6. And 2 weeks later, they lose to North Carolina. They're sitting 2-2. And, you know, they wind up and lose a couple more times. And all of a sudden, they've won 4 in a row, and they find themselves 6-1 in the Coastal. They're going to play Clemson for the ACC championship. And like I said, you know, it's been a shock to see Pitt do what they've done this year. And then now the question is, what do they do after they've clinched the division? They're on the road against the Miami team that's been very disappointing. I mean, I don't know, you think way back to the opening week of the season when they played LSU. Miami was supposed to be a national title contender. Got beat by LSU, and then They dropped 4 straight games in ACC play before winning against Virginia Tech last week. I mean, if you just look at the results for this season, it doesn't make much sense for Miami to be a 5.5-point favorite here. But all things considered, I mean, Pitt's got a nice record, but I still think that I don't think they're as good as their record. And then again, after clinching the Coastal, where's the motivation here for Pitt? So, I would probably lean with Miami here.
We got Temple at UConn. Looks like Temple laying 29-67 the total, Brent.
Yeah, Temple should have an easy time with UConn here. UConn 0-7 in conference play, 1-10 on the season. Their defense has just been horrendous. They've given up 548 points. I mean, everybody scores on UConn, and Temple right now at 6-1. They've had a pretty decent season. I expect them to put up some points here, and hard to lay this many on the road, but I don't want any part of Connecticut.
And guys, we got just a reminder here with the coupon code SHOOTOUT. That's SHOOTOUT at checkout. You can get Brent Crow or any Sportsmemo handicappers package, Turkey Day Shootout, but the coupon code is just SHOOTOUT, and you can get their 7-day all-access package for half off. Brent Crow obviously knows his college football, but it's that time of year to be beating the college basketball markets as well. So with that coupon code, you get half off of his 7-day all-access, which gives you access to NFL, college football, college basketball, whatever it may be. So remember that when you're checking out for a weekly package here at sportsmemo.com. We got another rivalry game here, Brent. Kentucky at Louisville. Looks like the Wildcats laying 17-51 the total.
This may be a little cheap. I mean, as bad as Louisville's played, Petrino was fired, didn't help last week. They lose 52-10 to NC State. I mean, their defense has just been atrocious. In their last 4 games, they've given up at least 50 points. And while Kentucky's not the most dynamic offense, they can run the ball. And I just think Louisville's quit. I mean, I saw no effort against NC State. Their offense has been a problem all year long, just completely discombobulated. And, Kentucky has a chance. I think Kentucky can win 10 games this year, which would be the first time in forever since the 1970s, I believe, that they've done so. And they did lose to Georgia a couple weeks ago and kind of ruined their conference season, but have win over their rival. Even though Louisville sucks, Kentucky would love to win here and win big. So I could see laying some points with Kentucky here.
We got South Carolina at Clemson, Brent, 59 the total, with the Clemson Tigers laying 26 at home.
Yeah, here's another rivalry, and you just took the underdog in this rivalry. That was it was about Money in the Bank for a number of years, but I'm not sure I want the underdog here. Clemson, obviously one of the top 2 teams in the country. They've been dominant. So far, for the most part, Clemson has avoided a letdown. I mean, their closest game lately was against Boston College when it was a 27-7 win. Really, the only real game that they had any trouble with was way back early in the season against Syracuse and Texas A&M. Other than that, it's been pretty much a domination for Clemson and South Carolina. They've been up and down. I know it's a huge game. It's their Super Bowl, but I just don't think they have enough firepower against Clemson.
Brent, we got Rutgers at Michigan State, 37.5 the total, 26.5, 27. Michigan State laying at home. Man, this is a kind of wild number here, combination of side and total.
Yeah, we've seen that with Rutgers all year. I mean, I think it was 37-45 a couple weeks ago against Michigan. And, it's just Rutgers has just been anemic offensively. I mean, their defense hasn't just been brutal, but, when your offense doesn't score, doesn't move the ball, you're going to give up points. And Rutgers has done so. Michigan State, 6-5 for the year. I mean, it's not a big game for Michigan State, but I mean, I don't think they have to be tremendously motivated to wipe out Rutgers here.
We got the battle at GSU's, Brent. Georgia Southern at Georgia State. Looks like Southern laying 11 on the road. This one in the field used to be called Turner Field, but now Georgia State plays there. 58 the total, Brent.
Yeah, I like Georgia Southern a little bit here. I mean, they've had a nice year at 8-3. Georgia State has struggled. only 1-6 in conference play, 2-9 on the regular season, and I don't see it's a home. The home field here, I don't think means a whole lot. You're not going to have 70,000 people, and it's not a long way for Georgia Southern to go either. So, I wouldn't give much credit for Georgia State's home field in this one.
We got Marshall at FIU. Looks like Marshall laying 2.5, 52.5 the total in Miami.
This could be a good game. Florida International's had a nice year at 6-1 in the conference. They're tied right now with MTSU in the East. Marshall's right behind at 5-2. So it should be an interesting game. It's surprising for me to see Marshall favored here. I mean, this is, I think more than anything, it's the fact that Marshall's got a little better name, and Florida International wasn't expected to do much this year. But I would look at the home dog here.
Yeah, I like that one as well. We got contrasting styles here, Brent. Syracuse at Boston College, two top 20 teams, 57.5 the total, with BC laying 7 at home.
Well, the whole deal here is the quarterbacks for Boston College. Anthony Brown came back last week and played against Florida State. Wasn't that effective? And we saw Syracuse, what happens when Eric Dungey's out. He left early in the Notre Dame game. They didn't do anything without him. No update yet, but they are hopeful he will play, is the latest that I've got on this one. And that's the whole thing. I mean, I don't want any part of Syracuse without him. If I have Eric Dungey, he's healthy, and I can get 7, I'm taking Syracuse. That's basically the bottom line. He's that important to this team.
We got arguably the biggest game on the slate. Michigan at Ohio State. Brent, seeing 3.5, some 4s out there depending where you're shopping. So this is a good one to make sure you got multiple books, and depending on what team you're looking at, 3.5 or 4 is what Michigan's laying on the road. 57 the total.
What is this, the second time Michigan's been favored against Ohio State in the last 15 years, something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
So uncharted territory for Michigan. And, Ohio State, I thought they were real fortunate to win last week. Maryland ran all over them. The guy ran for 300 yards. I mean, Ohio State has managed a 10-1 record this year, but every time I watch them, they're just not very impressive. Michigan, on the other hand, their defense, we knew coming into the year was going to be very salty, and it's been very good all year. Shea Patterson's had a pretty decent year at quarterback, but the history of this series, I think, comes into play a little bit, especially when you're talking about getting 4 at home. I'm definitely leaning toward taking the Buckeyes here.
163, 164, Illinois at Northwestern, 58 the total. Northwestern laying 18 at home.
Well, Northwestern, last week they were able to get a win in a game that, a lot of people thought they'd lose to Minnesota, but hey, they keep on winning 7-1 in the Big Ten. They're going to play the winner of that Michigan and Ohio State game in the championship game. And now you've got an 18-point line against their rival Illinois, who's been terrible this year, 2-6. And one thing I don't like to do with Northwestern is lay points, especially in a game that's meaningless and against their rival. So, this may be – it wouldn't surprise me to see Illinois come up with a big effort here, even though they've been so wishy-washy all year and at times have been just downright pathetic, 63-0 loss last week to Iowa. But I think you'll see – pretty good effort from the Illini here coming out. I mean, that's the worst loss in school history. Now you're playing your rival who's number 1 in the conference. It doesn't get set up any better than this for Illinois.
Guys, remember Brent Crow for college basketball. Last year he went 72-48, 60% plus 25 units on a 1 and 2 unit scale. It was absolutely great in college basketball. Has been off to a pretty good start this year in college basketball, and you can get his college football and college basketball for half off 7-day using the coupon SHOOTOUT at checkout on sportsmemo.com. We got 165, 166 here, Brent. Georgia Tech at Georgia, between the hedges, 59.5 the total. Looks like the Bulldogs laying 17 at home.
Yeah, Georgia obviously is the better team here, but this is a rivalry that Georgia, for the most part, has had the upper hand in this rivalry. They've had the better team most years, and usually they're able to get the job done against Georgia Tech. And Georgia Tech so far this season, it's been typical Georgia Tech. They've won 7 games, nothing great, nothing really bad. The one thing though, their option offense. Georgia sees it every year, so it's nothing that's going to be different. Like a team that hadn't faced it much. 17 seems to me about the right number, though. I mean, Georgia's explosive, but I think you probably give the edge in this year's rivalry to Georgia Tech, because it means a little more to Tech than it does to Georgia. Georgia's, they know where they're at, and it's been a successful season. But again, maybe just a small lean here to Georgia Tech.
We got Wake at Duke. Brent, 58 the total, with the Dukies laying 12.5 at home.
Yeah, Duke had the opportunity last week against Clemson, fell short, like most teams have done in ACC play. And prior to that, they had a couple of nice wins against Miami and North Carolina. And sitting right now in ACC play, 3-4. Wake Forest has had some up and down moments this year, but I think Duke is probably the right side here. 12.5, though. I mean, I'm just not a fan of laying a lot of points with mediocre teams, so I'm more than likely I'll just pass on this one.
Brent, heading up to the Big Ten, we got Minnesota at Wisconsin. 54 the total, with the Badgers laying 9.5 or 10 to the Gophers.
And if you look at this number, it seems maybe a little short here, but Wisconsin, they've alternated wins and losses in their last 6 games. They had the incredible triple overtime win against Purdue last week. And, coming off a triple overtime victory, again, nothing really at stake here. I mean, Wisconsin's bowl eligible already. Minnesota needs a win to get to 6-6. The Gophers struggling for the most part, all year. The last 2 weeks, though, I thought they played pretty well. Even in the loss to Northwestern last week. Prior to that, they had the 41-10 win over Purdue, and a little lean here to Minnesota.
Another rivalry one. We got NC State at UNC. Looks like 6.5 or 7. Important number here. Make sure to shop around and get the best of it, depending on who you're betting. 61.5 the total. This one in North Carolina, in Chapel Hill.
I think there's a little value with NC State here. I mean, North Carolina just 2-8 on the year, and in conference play, they've only had 1 win. They've been competitive for the most part, just have not been able to get over the hump. But they're coming off a win over Western Carolina last week, a little tune-up for NC State, which, as we talked about earlier, just demolished Louisville last week. But again, I thought the line might be a little cheap here for NC State.
Brent, we got Western Kentucky, Louisiana Tech, 49 the total. La Tech laying 11 at home.
Yeah, I could only see playing La Tech here. Western Kentucky at 2-9. I mean, this season basically over for them. And going on the road facing a Louisiana Tech team that's pretty solid defensively. Louisiana Tech hadn't scored a lot of points this year, but in conference play especially, they've been solid on defense. And again, 10.5 or 11. It seems like if I had to play it, I'd definitely lay the points.
Brent, we're heading to the deep, dark depths of Division I football to close out this segment. We got ODU Rice to start off, 175, 176. Looks like ODU -9, 63.5 the total.
Yeah, ODU at 4-7, laying 9 on the road. That means that Rice must be really bad, and they definitely are. I mean, Rice at 1-11. They've lost 11 straight, and I just find it hard. It'd be hard for me to find a way to back Rice here, getting points at home.
And when you say, do you think Rice is the worst team in college football, Brent?
Rice or Rutgers, maybe. I mean, I think it's probably between those two. I mean, as far as power conferences, I don't know that you really consider Conference USA a power conference, but it's hard to find them much worse than what Rice has done this year.
Brent, we got Southern Miss at UTEP. In the beginning of the season, a lot of people would have thought the Miners were going to be the worst, but they really haven't. Against the spread, they've had a couple covers for sure, but catching 13 at home here to a Southern Miss team, 44.5 the total.
Yeah, of course, UTEP's lone win came against Rice 3 weeks ago. Since then, they've gotten blown out by MTSU in Western Kentucky. And, again, when you're 1-10, you're playing your last game. I mean, how much motivation is there for a team like Rice or UTEP? And with Southern Miss, Southern Miss, I think it's had a little disappointing season, even though they have a winning record in conference play. I think they were expecting a little bit more than that, but they can get over 500 with the win here, so there is some motivation for Southern Miss.
Yeah, I believe Southern Miss is 5-6 going into this, so if they win, they will be going bowling. We got New Mexico State at Liberty to close it out, Brent, and if we do it in under a minute, we'll have done 20 games in 20 minutes, so congrats to you. 179-180, New Mexico State at Liberty, 73 the total, and Liberty, the Flames, I believe, they've been a wild handicap all season, Brent. I haven't been able to get a read on them at all, but laying 9 at home to New Mexico State.
Yeah, and you wonder how they are after playing at Auburn last week, as far as as far as their health goes. I mean, obviously they didn't compete against Auburn. Should have a chance to win though against New Mexico State, and I don't know. It's another one of those games that doesn't mean a lot for either team. You wonder where the motivation is for a New Mexico State team going on the road to finish the season, a 3-8 season, and they're only playing Liberty. I mean, it's not like a marquee opponent or a rival.
Good stuff, Brent. Anything you want to throw out before we shut this segment down?
Just college basketball. I mean, I love this week where you've got games from noon to midnight, basically. And, there's been some opportunities, and we're going to continue to have success in college basketball.
Yeah, Brent's a great choice for college basketball last year, 72-48. That's 60%, up 25 units on a 1 and 2 unit scale. Make sure to check him out at his homepage, sportsmemo.com. He's got a play up right now at Sportsmemo. And probably the best option, we got this special, the Turkey Day Shootout. Using the coupon code SHOOTOUT at checkout, you get half off of his weekly all access. So that will include college basketball and college football, also the NFL, with the coupon code SHOOTOUT at checkout for his 7-day all access package. Thanks, Brent, for the time. We'll try to get you on Friday to talk a little college basketball going into the weekend. But guys, we'll be right back with the next segment of College Football Every Game on the Board podcast.